Hello, my name is Karina Pierce, and it's my pleasure today to present the findings of my Nuffield studies that focused on future-proofing the Irish agri-food sector through robust research. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I hope to present the highlights and the key findings with more detail in the report for those interested. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the sponsors for their continued support of Nuffield, and particularly to FBD Trust for sponsoring my scholarship. Why this topic? The agri-food sector, as we know, is extremely important to the Irish economy. However, substantial challenges lie ahead in the coming decades. Agriculture globally must produce more food for a growing, increasingly affluent population, while it competes for access for increasingly scarce natural resources, preserves biodiversity and water quality. It must mitigate the effects of climate change and address consumer concerns around issues such as animal welfare. Research seeks to address these agri-food challenges and is critically important as a driver of innovation and competitiveness of the sector. From a business perspective, RD&I, or Research, Development and Innovation proactive companies, have been shown to generate higher export and sales. And many of the challenges faced are not specific to Ireland, as expressed through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and therefore Ireland can learn from the experience of others. By having this information, we can make more informed decisions about the best direction of our own RD&I investment. The main aims of the study were to evaluate if the needs of Ireland's agri-food sector are being addressed through current research. There were a few objectives. The first, to review the research landscape in Ireland, then to investigate the current and future focused research priorities here and in other major agri-food producing countries, and finally then to identify key concepts and actions required for the development of a future focused research and innovation agenda. To address my topic, I had the privilege of travelling to 11 countries over 12 weeks in 2019 and earlier this year, where I met with many researchers, farmers, government officials, entrepreneurs, businesses, and fellow Nuffield scholars. The agri-food research and innovation landscape is a complex one, as you can see from this graphic. There is a very substantial agri-food RD&I programme ongoing in Ireland when activities across the research performing organisations such as COHESION, the universities, the institutes of technology are considered. The emergence of technology centres has also increased RD&I activity and collaboration between the various research performing organisations and private industry. There's also considerable investment by the state in RD&I in the agri-food sector, and this was estimated at 157 million in 2018. There was a further estimated 124 million from private industry invested in RD&I on an annual basis, and business investment in this area has grown by about 30% between 2008 and 2013. Despite the increase in industry investment funding into RD&I, it still remains quite low in the agri-food sector, and the sector underperforms when benchmarked against its global competitors. Indeed, the Food Harvest and FoodWise documents recommended a significant increase in industry investment in RD&I in order to realise the potential that exists in the sector. While my report also focused on current research activities, in this presentation I want to focus on the future. What are the future research needs of the sector and how do they differ to what is happening currently? It is clear that agriculture faces significant challenges. In short, future research must focus on sustainable food production, and we must be open to disruptive change. Biofuels, biorefineries, alternative foods, the carbon economy, and greater diversity in production systems could lead to opportunities in Ireland that are not currently being considered. To make these sorts of shifts, however, we need to ensure that we have the science necessary to provide evidence for decision and policy making. In New Zealand, there is increased resources being allocated into investigating alternative land use opportunities, looking beyond dairy for New Zealand and asking what the next billion-dollar industry will be. New Zealand have also developed a primary sector science roadmap with 8 key themes for future science and technology necessary in order to increase the value derived from the primary sector. A national policy to give direction to strategy and investment decision making by funders and research providers and so on here is also critical. The challenges that I saw in Australia were very different, in part due to the size of the country, but also due to the political influence currently on their current research strategy, with less focus on the environment and greenhouse gas emissions than I saw elsewhere, as the current government doesn't currently believe in climate change. The strategy in the Netherlands appears more coordinated. The Netherlands are leaders in agri-innovation and remain focused on continuing this trend, but with an increasing focus on the bio and circular economies and food systems sustainability. The future direction for Ireland will very much be influenced by what is happening at EU level. And the EU is advocating a food systems approach, incorporating all aspects of the food chain, from primary food production through to consumer health and behaviour. On a visit to Brussels in February, it was clear that the view of the European Commission is that future food production systems must be sustainable in terms of delivering a supply of safe, healthy food with low environmental impacts. And this will require a hugely enhanced level of innovation, as well as access to new types of technology. This view is very much reflected in the EU Farm to Fork strategy recently published. To deal with challenges faced by the sector, strong partnerships between industry, policymakers and research providers will be required to ensure that science is translated into strong business, policy and management decisions. However, while technology will definitely feature more prominently in future agricultural systems, we must be cognizant of the growing disconnect between primary food production and consumers and the acceptability of private industry funding for research and agri-technology to consumers. And this was clear during the United Nations meetings in Rome last October. A few key conclusions from the study are that the RD&I system has a key role to play in providing solutions to transform the food system into more sustainable, resilient, responsible, diverse, competitive and inclusive pathways. To be transformative, however, there needs to be a move from component-type research to a more food systems approach, and from short-term focused programs to longer-term, more strategic research programs. The increased requirement from private sector industry funding in major research programs may increase the utility of the research among those companies. However, an effective communication strategy is critical to prove transparency and to build trust with consumers. What I've tried to do in this slide is to summarize the key findings from my conversations with stakeholders over the last 2 years. Common themes arising were that in order to achieve the ambition of a sustainable agri-food system, there needs to be greater cohesion, collaboration and communication amongst all actors and organisations within the system. Cohesion between government, the various national and international agri-food policies and funders of RD&I is a critical first step. This could be achieved through having more coherent oversight, perhaps through one department, committee, or a head of agri-food or an I. A cross-sectoral steering committee could also ensure greater engagement across the entire sector. And a mission-led approach could be beneficial to ensure that funded research is targeted to solving the grand challenges facing the sector. If we look then at collaboration, solving the problems within the food system will require meaningful collaboration amongst all actors involving, including the main government departments and agencies, universities and so on. In combination with this, involvement from primary producers and the wider agri-food industry will be critical, as will insight from social scientists. And while it's more difficult to obtain, insights from citizens and consumers will help to future-proof any future strategy. Achieving this could be aided through innovative funding mechanisms that promote meaningful collaboration. And while communication is often lower down the priority list, it is vital to the success of any strategy. And this communication needs to be focused both towards those working within the agri-food sector and also to the wider public. Communication would be easier if there was a single sectoral strategy document and led by a single department, a committee or a head of agri-food or D&I to coordinate. From a primary production perspective, continued investment in extension services is essential to communicate research findings with farmers and to ensure that research doesn't move too far ahead of practice. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. Finally, a huge thanks to my family, friends, mentors, and everyone who helped me along the way. In Nuffield, Ireland, thank you to Karen Brosnan, John Tyrrell and Mary Webb for all their support. It has been an amazing journey where I got to meet amazing people, to see amazing places, to develop my networks and to make friends for life. Thank you.